The Wellsong Testament is a horror anthology podcast created and narrated by Jacob Slobodnik. Book 1, The Hollow Beneath. Chapter 1, The Well. They built Dunridge where the trees were too quiet, where the birds stopped singing after dusk, where the ground was soft enough to dig, but never quite dry. The settlers called it a gift. The Mohegan guide who brought them called it something else, and he wouldn't set foot past the pine line. Said the earth there was already full. No one listened, not at first. My name is not important. I'm just the one holding the pages now, the scraps, the burned edges, the only words that survived. The truth they left buried with the roots. This is what I've found. October the 3rd, 1743. Samuel Karr began digging the well today. The ground gave easy. Too easy. Like it had been waiting for us. He was the first to break soil in Dunridge. A farmer's son turned homesteader, stubborn as sun-baked leather. Said God had guided his hands to just the right spot. No tools, just a spade and a whisper. The well was finished by moonlight. By dawn, it was filled, not with water, but with something that shimmered just a little too bright for the morning. Clear as glass, cold as bone. They said it was a blessing. The preacher called it heaven sent. Samuel Karr stopped attending sermons not long after that. Said he heard more honest gospel down in the dark. Then he began sleeping beside the well. Then above it, building a platform like a porch without a house. By winter, he was talking about dreams. He said the earth was speaking to him, telling him what it wanted, what it needed. The townsfolk now, they called it madness at first, but the well never ran dry, even in the droughts, even in the winters that split other towns in half. So they let Samuel be. They let him build, and they let him listen. Until the night he vanished, when the platform collapsed with a groan so loud it cracked windows. They found no body, no blood, just the well, dark and yawning, and deep drag marks in the soil leading down. They filled it with stone, said it was for safety, said it was God's will. But some nights, you can still hear it, a low, slow breath rising from beneath the rocks, waiting. The well was sealed, stone by stone laid by the preacher's own hand. They held a service right there in the dirt, sang hymns and splashed it with oil. They called it purification, closure. But Dunridge didn't close, it opened. 2 nights later, young Clara Harnell was found standing beside the well, barefoot, eyes wide open, frozen to the skin. She didn't blink, she didn't speak, just held her hand out to her father and dropped a piece of cloth in his palm. Samuel Karr's shirt, torn, wet, and warm. That's when the dreams began. It started with the ones who had helped fill the well, then their children, then their children's children. They dreamed of wet soil and a sound like wind through a cavern, of voices with no mouths, of eyes blinking open in the dark. One woman said she saw her unborn child floating in a pool below the stone. Another said her husband's voice came from beneath the earth, asked her to come down, to join him. Now, you have to understand, they didn't see this as a curse. Not then, not yet. They called it a blessing of visions, a saint's touch, if you will. They began to believe the well had been dug on sacred ground, a place chosen. They named it the Listening Mouth, and they prayed not for silence, but to hear more clearly. Root cellars started to collapse. The ground softened in patches. Sometimes you'd see holes, clean, round, about the size of a child's torso, appearing in the fields overnight. Always damp and always empty. Now, they said it was moles or bad drainage or frost, but no one dug too deep, not after what happened to Thomas Eli. See, he was 7 years old, went missing in the orchard. His mother says she saw him chasing something beneath the trees, something pale and wide-mouthed. That's when they found a pit, about 5 feet deep. No claw marks, no signs of struggle, just a pile of teeth. Baby teeth, all his. The well, the dreams, the breathing, they were all just symptoms, not the sickness itself. Something was waking, not all at once, but inch by inch, heartbeat by heartbeat. And the people of Dunridge, they didn't run, they didn't scream. They listened, and they called it faith. They didn't know they were being taught a language, not of words, but of hunger. It didn't take long for the town to follow Malachi Dern. They liked his calm, his voice, the way he spoke like someone listening to something bigger, something older. And when the winter broke early that year, when the crops returned full and fast, despite the frost still clinging to the trees, they said that was proof. Proof that the land approved, that something beneath them had accepted their worship. And so the congregation grew. They held their first feast of listening that spring. They didn't call it a sacrifice, not then. But a pig was led out under moonlight, its throat opened with a silver knife. The blood was pouring down between the stones of that sealed well. Malachi spoke one word. The crowd repeated it. No one remembered the word the next morning. No one ever did. But they all dreamed that night of a shape rising behind their closed eyes, of a warmth, coiling, shifting, smiling. The earth around the well turned soft. The stones began to sink. And then, in the weeks that followed, the dreams stopped. No more visions, no more whispering, just quiet. Reverend Dern said it meant they'd done well, that the mouth was full, that they should rest and wait, and wait, and wait. Until the night the platform fell again. But this time, not because of wind, not rock, not accident. Witnesses say the ground breathed in, like lungs dragging deep. The platform folded, not snapped, not shattered, folded in on itself like paper dipped in ink. And from the well, from that dark, sealed hole, something rose. Not all of it, but just the tip. They said it looked like the end of a tongue, slick, pale, and wide, coated in hair-thin ridges that pulsed with breath. And at its center was an eye, closed. It didn't open, it didn't look, just waited, like it was listening. No one screamed. They knelt, as if in prayer. Even those who hadn't come for the ritual, even the children, all of them on their knees before a piece of something so large it had no business being inside a well. They say Malachi wept. They say he spoke the name again, the one no one remembers, except maybe the earth. By morning, the thing was gone, retreated, no trace left, only a wide crack across the top stones, and a sound. Some claimed it was wind, others said it was the trees, but those who had knelt said it was something else. A sound like lungs pulling in, like a voice preparing to speak. People of Dunridge had been heard. That was the last entry in the first book of Malachi Dern. The rest was burned intentionally, ritually. But his second journal, the one hidden in the church cellar before the fire, survived, and I found it. Buried beneath old stone and splintered bone, sealed in wax. The last page is dated March 23rd, 1925, and it reads, "He has risen." Now, we like to think that history sits still, that what's buried stays buried, that if a town disappears from the maps, the land forgets what happened there. But the earth has a memory, and sometimes it breathes it back up. Samuel Karr dug a well. He thought he found water, but he didn't. He found the first crack in the shell, the first mouth, and maybe it was never meant to stay closed. Now, I don't know if he was the first to hear it, but he wasn't the last. Next time, we'll speak of the woman who saw the truth in her dreams, who bore a prophecy into the soil of Dunridge, who built a chapel atop the wound in the world and called it faith. Her name was Prudence Dunmore, but the town remembers her by another name, the name she spoke in her sleep, the one that doesn't exist in any Bible, Saint Berain.